What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic here. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Emerson Latzia, holding it down in the DraftKings studio in Boston. We are brought to you by Wrangler. Made for the ride of life. Save 15% on your first Wrangler.com order with promo code GOJO15. Got a great show for you guys, as always. Download, subscribe, rate, review. Check us out right here Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on DraftKings YouTube, DraftKingsNetwork.com, and Samsung TV Plus. Jason Cabinda from the Detroit Lions going to join us again in a little bit in the show. Durham Smythe, Miami Dolphins tight end, going to explain to us how Mike McDaniel does all of this voodoo magic and scores 70 points in an NFL football game, Dad. So maybe we can finally get some secrets of pride out of him.
Boy, that would be nice. I'm sure we'll try not to relive, as he's a Notre Dame grad, the Notre Dame game against Ohio State. But we do want to see what it's like on that sideline when you're just scoring and scoring and scoring 70 points in a game. I've never seen anything like that. So that would be good to kind of go on the inside of that one. But we did have some ball last night. We had a couple of more games. I kind of like the Monday. I don't know if you like them now. When I called the second Monday night games years ago, it was a later start. The first game would start at 7, and then the game I did was usually out on the West Coast with the Raiders or the Broncos and it started at 10 o'clock. I kind of like this hour in between because I love the last button on my controller. I can just flip back and forth. I know there are those that don't like it so much because it's two going on at the same time. I wonder where you stand on that.
I'm into it now. I'm a YouTube TV user, so I can get the two pictures right next to each other and watch both games at once here.
I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, and you don't need to worry about that. Don't need to worry. It's not even a real thing in your life. Forget I mentioned it. Instead, focus on the fact that we're going to have a lot of takeaways from both of these games here. The Rams get dispatched by the Cincinnati Bengals, who saved their season. The Philadelphia Eagles march to 3-0 over the previously undefeated Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which is a wild sentiment. But that was not the most important takeaway from Monday Night Football's, plural, walking into the studio this morning, as my dad learned about a new band this morning. Emerson came in with his most exciting takeaway from Monday Night Football. They decided for some reason in the bump back music to bring back Puddle of Mud in a way that absolutely delighted. Emerson, why was this such a big fascination for you?
This is because it reminds me it was this pure nostalgic joy from the early 2000s. Puddle of Mud. Everything's so blurry and everyone's so fake. And then the three of us learned together butt music. There's butt rock. And that includes bands like Nickelback and Buck Cherry as well. I've never heard of butt rock before.
What is there a definition of it? Is it defined anywhere?
So I'm glad you asked. I went and found the butt rock definition on I went to the source here and just went right to Urban Dictionary. Butt rock is a style of hard rock heavy metal music that's watered down both musically and lyrically to garner maximum radio and mainstream acceptance. The lyrics are drawn on from a tough guy bro persona, yada, yada, yada. Butt rock bands typically consist of guys in their mid-30s with spiky hair, affliction shirts, and bad tattoos. So, yeah, all this kind of tracks with the bands that Emerson mentioned and did produce an era of music that was pretty popular with me. So apparently the target audience worked.
Creed, Three Doors Down. Come on, man. The list just goes on and on and on. I know you've heard of some of these.
When I'm gone by Three Doors Down, it's a core memory.
Emerson, I'm stunned. I have never heard of these guys. I'm reading about them. To date, they have sold over 7 million albums and have had a string of #1 mainstream songs. I've never heard of this band in my life. Now, when you were playing it, I thought there were hints of Creed and Nirvana in it, but I had never heard of. And here's the next thing I'd like to know, and maybe we're going to have to do a little research and not do it on the spot. Just as we wondered where Hootie and the Blowfish were, that title came from, where does Puddle of Mud go? Where do some of these band names come from?
Puddle of Mud's more weird because they use two, I don't know.
Yeah, they use 2 Ds.
2 Ds. Yeah, that's the weird part.
That's what you got to do. You got to be hip and cool.
Right.
That's hip and cool?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Yeah, and also, like, puddle of mud's a little bit easier to explain away than Hootie and the Blowfish. Like, I don't really understand what the Hootie portion of that is.
No.
Puddle of mud, you just walked outside. You might be walking to your gig. You step in a puddle of mud. You go, damn, that's a puddle of mud.
Okay.
Oh, wait, that kind of sounds jazzy.
So
here we go. Here.
That's what I want to know. How do you get that name? Do you
All right, here we go. I have it.
Oh, good.
Okay. All right, here. According to this article, the band name was inspired by practicing next to the Missouri River levee, which always inundated the band's practice space, but never ruined their equipment since they were on the second floor.
There you go. So they were practicing in a literal puddle of mud.
Maybe that's what made them so angry, too, you know? They're like, we can't go downstairs. The floor is flooded out.
It's good when you don't have to manufacture angst, right? It's like a coach trying to get a team hype in the pregame, and sometimes you got to manufacture stuff. It sounded like their angst was very real. They were trying not to get dirty.
No, they certainly weren't, but they have produced some bangers. And again, you Twitter search it, everybody from like our generation is just like, oh my God, this reminds me of the glory days, being back in high school and eating all that fake meat in the cafeteria.
That's awesome, because I'm, this many days old when I heard a puddle of mud. So
I'm making you a playlist after this show, Golic. I'm making you a playlist.
Good. Listen,
a butt rock
and
playlist.
I'm cool with that, because I'm open to, new music and such, man. I'm a 70s, 80s guy, really 70s rock, that I listen to on XM. But I'm open to some new music, and like I said, it sounded like familiar type of music from that era. So not completely foreign to me, but puddle of mud, hey, more power to you.
Yeah, dude. Welcome to butt rock culture, man.
Butt rock.
I was going to say, we have migrated from yacht rock to hard rock to sob rock to now butt rock.
This is the perfect start to the show, guys. Nice job.
Butt rocking into your Tuesday here. Butt rock also could loosely be called what the Rams offense looked like in the red zone last night. We'll get to that here shortly. But, Dad, the much easier one to digest here, maybe from butt rock to tush push, as the Philadelphia Eagles bowl over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in a game that sort of felt inevitable, Dad, and it still feels like through 3 weeks we haven't seen the Eagles' best brand of football yet. But last night, squeaky wheel gets the grease. The offensive line goes out and continues to dominate, but A.J. Brown has a massive game, 9 catches for 131 yards. He was targeted on 45.2% of his routes last night, his highest target rate in a game as an Eagle. So that sideline conversation morphed into some balls for him.
I mean, just an excellent game by really this defense. The offense is still now. I know Jalen Hurts had a stomach bug. He was 1 of 7 in the red zone. He has been off a little bit there, but when you get A.J. Brown involved, but you have that running attack. They had 201 yards rushing against the defense, and I know it's early in the season in Tampa Bay. That was number 2 or 3 against the run, have been giving up like 52 yards. They gave up over 200 to the Eagles, and that's still no matter. And Jalen Hurts is a better passer than what we've seen. But this offense still runs through the running game, which obviously includes Jalen Hurts and now what DeAndre Swift is doing, and always that offensive line. So that's how they control the ball. Mike, this was an O-lineman's dream. An O-lineman's dream to get the ball back after Tampa Bay scores, and it's 25-11. Yep. So Tampa Bay, and there's still over 9 minutes to go in the game. So there's still a chance to get the ball back, maybe once or twice, and get yourself back into this game. The Eagles ran the clock out. There was 9:22 left in the game. The Eagles ran the clock out. I can't tell you how much joy, Mike, you can, that brings to an O-lineman, but what I can tell you is how much angst that brings you to a former defensive player like me to not be able to get the ball back in 9 minutes for your offense to try and make a comeback. That is some excellent football. And we haven't even started talking about the better side of the ball right now for the Eagles, and that's their defense.
Yeah, that 9-minute stretch reminded me a lot, and doing it on the road, of what Texas did against Alabama this year. Alabama punted with 8 minutes left in the game after kicked off after scoring with 8 minutes left in the game. Never got the ball back because Texas went out there and rammed it down their throats, much like this Eagles team did. And you're right, Dad. Early in the season, tough sample size, right? You look at the teams that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers beat. It's the Bears and the Vikings. The Vikings, who look like they're just going to not have a run play in the playbook the entire season and let Kirk Cousins gain every yard for them. But we still know the personnel over there, Levante David, Vita Vea. There's a bunch of names that have pedigree and history in this league of being good in this facet, and it just doesn't matter right now. And I think that's why for the Eagles, and you heard their coaching staff and their players talk about it after the game, how everyone wants them to be a fully formed product right now. As we've seen, and we'll talk about later, they lost a lot this offseason. They've been banged up in certain places. Their two former coordinators both look like they're doing pretty darn well to start their head coaching careers in Jonathan Gannon and Shane Steichen. So it's a lot of turnover for this team, who also is going to have that target on their back. But the floor is so high when you can go out there and just mash along the line of scrimmage like that. And you had Miles Sanders, who departs this offseason. DeAndre Swift, who's always been an elite talent, looks like he has arrived in running back nirvana, if we're going to talk about nirvana. But, Dad, the other side of this, you are absolutely right. Jalen Carter, according to Next Gen Stats, finished with a team-high 5 pressures on 16 pass rushes in the Eagles' win over the Bucs. That's a 31.3% pressure rate. Through the first 3 weeks, he is tied for second among defensive tackles in total pressures with 15. Dad, they just couldn't block him on the inside. Him, Jordan Davis, we highlighted that matchup going into this game, and it was every bit of the dominance performance you expected them to turn in.
I mean, do we remember, does it seem like years ago when there was the uh-oh moment? Do you draft Jalen Carter? Do you not draft Jalen Carter? The off-field issues at Georgia and what was going on? Was there character issues? So we thought he was going to go maybe in the top 5 in this draft. Obviously, he falls and goes, to the Eagles in this, and he has been. And listen, you can talk more about this again as a former center and guard who has played against some of the top players who are in the league now when they were in college. This guy just makes a new line of scrimmage. He just goes forward and cannot be pushed back. So he's a yard or two deep. And oh, by the way, he gets the pressures. He got half a sack. He and Fletcher Cox shared a sack. But also on a dump-off pass, and defenders work on this all the time. It's called a pursuit drill. You rush the passer as a D lineman, and when they throw the ball, you turn and you sprint, and you try and get an angle. And if you don't, you get nailed for it in film. I mean, it is a loaf. So it is worked on all the time till it's ingrained in your head. Rush the passer, ball's thrown, turn and sprint. Well, Jalen Carter did that. And so much so, and had a beautiful punch on a completed ball where the back was running down the field and knocked it out and created a fumble. So, I mean, this guy has been doing it all. His defense is incredible, and we knew it would start to happen because it's going to happen. Tampa Bay came into this game with no turnovers and left with 2. The first interception by Baker Mayfield and that fumble forced by Jalen Carter that the Eagles recovered. So that was going to start to happen. We knew it. And once Tampa Bay got down the way they did, even though you have Mike Evans on that team, they're just not good enough to mount that kind of a comeback, being a few scores down to come back.
Yep, exactly. So this one went the way that we expected. While they were able to make the score look a little bit closer late, this game was never really in question. It always belonged to the Philadelphia Eagles here. And so they're going to march on. And again, Jalen Hurts, I thought, had some moments in this game. There were a couple of drives where he stood in there, made some big-time throws down the field, took some hits in the pocket in doing so. You see all the signs there. I think it's why, and I use this term a lot, Philadelphia feels like a crockpot team. You're going to kind of get to set them and forget them because between personnel, coaching, and what we know they're capable of, I feel pretty confident that they're going to be playing meaningful football down the stretch of the season like we all expected them coming in as one of the handful of teams that we really trusted in the NFC. And for the Buccaneers, we're still kind of waiting, seeing, hey, after that 2-0 start, albeit against 2 of the other worst teams in the NFL, is this team going to outperform expectations, or are they still going to be where maybe their fans secretly want them to be in the sweepstake for the number 1 overall pick? Let's move to the second game here, Emerson, and look at Joe Burrow and the Bengals went out and gritted one out last night.
Well, real quick, Mike, you mentioned the score last night between the Eagles and the Bucs. By the way, that was the second scoragami in as many days in the NFL. Dude, it happened on Sunday, 70-20, that Miami-Denver game, and then last night, 25-11. So we're talking the 1,077th and 1,078th unique final scores in NFL history. Major takeaway there, Mike.
Dad, do you have any concept of what scoragami is?
I do not know. You guys are speaking a different language. So between, puddle of mud or mud in the puddle or stepping in a puddle and now scoring origami. What the hell is going on? Where is this talk show stuff gone since I started this back in 1998 when I first got into this stuff?
The nerds infiltrated.
Yeah.
These are unique scores. These are scores that have never happened. We have never seen before in the history of the NFL, Senior.
So last night, Dad, that score in the game between the Eagles and the Buccaneers had never happened in the history of the NFL before. We had never had a game finish 25-11 in the history of the NFL, and so we now checked another score off the list of Scoragami.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. I understand the significance of it. I did not know it was called Scoragami.
Yeah.
That's a cute name, actually. Okay. All right. I've been educated. I learned something.
There you go. And let me tell you something. It's extremely rare to have really maybe one in a season, but to have two in back-to-back days. We're talking history here, Senior. And Jalen Hurts, by the way, guys, 20-1 now in his last 21 regular season games. Was dealing with some flu symptoms last night. It was like his Michael Jordan flu game. Joe Burrow, yes, Junior, 1-0 now in his last game. He was far from his best last night. That win against the Rams, Cincinnati taking a chance with him dealing with the ailing calf injury here. The gamble paid off. Really still wasn't himself. 26 of 49, 259 yards, no scores, 1 interception. Far from a vintage effort. Here's Smokin' Joe after the game.
I'd always rather throw for 400, but you know, I pride myself on my availability, and so I was happy to be available for my guys tonight. Obviously, a lot of room to improve, but I was happy to be out there. There is risk to go out there and potentially re-injure it, but there's also a risk to go out there and be 0-3. So I wanted to be out there for my guys, and you know, I was confident that I would be able to do what I needed to get the win. It's gonna be better this week than it was last week. That's just comes with time and rest. So we got a short week, so it's going to be a challenge, but I'm confident that we'll be able to put in the work to be ready for Sunday.
GoJo, encouraging sign of him kind of reconnecting with Jamar Chase. 12 catches, 141 yards. They got the win, but to me, they didn't get right.
No, and listen, Joe Burrow still doesn't look right, too. We saw him grimacing a ton. He had the hyper ice on it on the sideline and everything. Like, this is going to be something we have to continue to monitor for this team, but they did use Jamar Chase in a bunch of really creative ways in that offense. They put him in the backfield. They got him the ball all over the field. Football's simple. Get your best players the ball in space, and good things tend to happen. Dad, this O-line still gave up some pressures, albeit against Aaron Donald, who, you know, has a long list of bodies that he's added to his resume. They got to mail the thank you card to the defense. We said yesterday, Lou Anarumo and company, we're going to have to step up, and a vintage performance from Big Lou here, who sent a bunch of really creative pressures. You saw Dax Hill getting downhill. Trey Hendrickson had a monster game. This was a game totally defined by what the Bengals reminded us they're capable of on defense.
Yeah, I mean, when you never, or at least I don't think a lot of people do, because you see Burrow and Chase and Higgins, and you think it's an offensive-led team. This team's been led by their defense until the offense can catch up. And I know we keep hearing about Burrow and his calf and not practicing. Well, remember, he didn't practice the last couple of years either in the preseason and started out slow, and then they pick it up. What I still don't like, Mike, is the split. You know, it's a close game. This was never, you had to get out of your game plan. 49 passes, 23 runs. I think that's just a wide margin split as your quarterback is trying to get, you know, healthy again. It would be nice to rely on the running attack a little more. Now, the running attack didn't go very well in the 23 runs. They averaged under 3 yards a carry, but you still, I think the attempts still help. You know, it was good to see Chase get involved. He had 70 yards total coming into this game, 141 last night alone. But as you mentioned, the defense, 6 sacks, Henderson with a couple sacks, Logan Wilson with 2 picks. Logan Wilson since 2020 has 9 interceptions, the most, of linebackers, in that time frame. The guy is such a ball hawk, but 6 sacks. So they put pressure on Stafford, who threw those 2 interceptions as well. So you're right. This is another one where the Eagles defense we talked about being so tough last night, when that offense is going to be more of a running attack than passing, but you expect more explosiveness out of the Cincinnati offense, and they're not there yet, but they got to win still without that. And that's what they want to do. While you said Philly is, kind of that crock pot, set it and forget it. Cincinnati's got some building to do to get back to where they were. And they've done it in the past. They've done it in the last 2 years. So let's see if they can do it again. So quickly after last night, Miami, San Francisco, Philly are your last 3 unbeaten teams.
Game changed on a dime when Tutu Atwell was ruled out of bounds. I thought he was in, but it doesn't matter what I think. Coming up next, we'll see what the polls think. of the new shakeups in college football after an exciting weekend slate. Next on GoJo and Golic.
All right, back here on GoJo and Golic. There's been a shakeup in the top 5 of the new college football rankings after a wild week 4 that featured 6 games between teams in the AP top 25. No results was more notable than Ohio State going into South Bend, sorry guys, and getting a last-second victory against Notre Dame. Buckeyes moving up 2 spots to number 4. You see Georgia, Michigan, Texas sticking at 1, 2, 3. Florida State dropping to 5 after the OT win over Clemson. Penn State moving to 6. Colorado falling out of the top 5. I believe Iowa and UCLA joining them there. Go Joe, your takeaway here from the latest, greatest top 25, my dude.
Well, you mentioned one of the most important feats as we all keep track of the drive to 325 going on, a decided step back for the Iowa Hawkeyes and Penn State this week. Penn State allowed just 76 yards to this Iowa offense. And I understand we're going to focus on them, but the Penn State defense certainly deserves their flowers as well. As that dead quietly might be a result most worth paying attention to this weekend. We had a lot of other close results that we could certainly infer from. But as we go along this season, Dad, we're starting to get to the point now where more teams are getting into conference play. We saw this last week, 6 ranked matchups. So we've gotten enough good on good for the most part to start to buy into that handful of teams up top that feel like they're capable of being playoff teams. And Dad, as we walk into the upcoming season where we're going to deal with the expanded playoff, this is the perfect sampler platter for why so many people were clamoring for that. Because in a year where right now it doesn't feel like we've got one extremely dominant team that we can point to and say is heads and tails above everybody else, it feels as accessible for the playoff and the title as it has been in the last 3 or 4. I mean, 3, 4, entire college football playoff era, but certainly in the last handful of years is we've either had a dominant Alabama team or a dominant Clemson in Alabama, and in the last few years, a dominant Georgia team.
Yeah, listen, this would be a great year if they went to 12 right now, right? Of what we could get right now. And I know it's not the committee, but the AP rankings, 1 is Georgia, 12 is Alabama, then fill in all the other teams in between. That's a pretty hefty crew. But yeah, only 2 ranked this week. You're doing one of them, Duke and Notre Dame. So it's a little less than we had last week. But to your point, you're right. You start to kind of see where teams are going. And it reminds me again, it's a shame in the Big Ten that Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State are all on the same side. I mean, that is such a bummer. It's always the hopes of, is there anybody that can challenge, and we thought, is it going to be Wisconsin? And they've been, they're 3-1, but not coming out of the gates like we thought. So I'm really interested in how far, because we keep saying Michigan, Ohio State going to come down to that game. Where Penn State, they're the one team right now to me, Mike, that I'm wondering where they're going to fit in handling all their jobs right now. But once they get to those big games, because that's what you can do with those teams in the Big Ten, is point to when they all play one another. Kind of the same thing in the Pac-12, right? It still blows my mind as we have 27 undefeated teams left in Division I, and where the Pac-12 is in the rankings of when you start playing each other and knocking each other off. That the Penn State team, probably of all the other teams, is one of the most interesting to me, is if they can kind of put their wedge in between that Ohio State-Michigan matchup.
Yeah, they're in it's interesting to try and tier the teams that we have right now and where Penn State would fall, because I think if you're working down right at the top, you've got Georgia and Michigan, who really haven't played anyone to this point, really haven't wowed anyone at this point, but they bring back largely the same teams, more so Michigan than Georgia, but bring back teams that were in the college football playoff last year, in Georgia's case, the back-to-back defending champ. And so despite a schedule that lines up for them to waltz back to the playoff, we really don't feel like we know much about the ceiling for either team yet. You look a little bit further down there, and you've got teams like Texas and Ohio State now that own marquee wins early in college football. I would throw Florida State in there as well, probably 2 of the best wins in the sport, beating LSU week 1 on that standalone game, and then beating Clemson, who, while unranked, still is an incredibly talented group, and winning in Death Valley is extremely hard. So you've got those teams sitting there next in that group. And then after that, you've got, like you mentioned, Penn State, who with them, Michigan and Ohio State, we're kind of going to find out about them when they all play their round robin in November. And then the entire Pac-12. And I would say, Dad, right now for the Pac-12, Washington, Oregon, and USC feel like they're in one tier. Yeah. And then I've got to, even though they're the back-to-back Pac-12 defending champions, No Cam Rising still for Utah as we go further into the season becomes more and more of a worry about even what a tough, well-coached Kyle Whittingham team is going to be able to do against these other teams that are going out here and playing a brand of offensive football that is scorching the earth.
Well, I mean, we know realistically anyway, Utah is going to live off their defense. I mean, really shutting down UCLA the way they did last week. But you would like a little more out of your offense. And if nothing else, it gave Cam Rising another week to get ready before they really get into the serious play of the Pac-12. So that was even though last week was a good game with them and UCLA, was a 14-7 defensive battle there. Then you kind of look at teams that have the loss but are still in it. Remember, Alabama and LSU's losses were out of conference. So obviously with the conference title still on the line, that they still are right where they want to be. Even though Notre Dame is not in a conference, their loss is to Ohio State, a team that's sitting at number 4 right now. So Notre Dame fans will want Ohio State to keep winning, and then Notre Dame needs to take care of their business to still have a shot as well. So that's looking at some of the lowers, trying to raise themselves to the uppers. But of the undefeated, I love Bill Connolly over at ESPN puts out the undefeated rankings all the time. And he again has Washington number 1. And in 2 weeks, October 14th, I think it is, we're getting it. We're getting Washington and Oregon, which I don't know what the over is going to be on that game. We know it's going to be high. I don't know what the highest over has ever been in a college football game with 2 like blue bloods like this. But that's going to be a game. And again, we talk about when you start to knock each other off. But boy, what a battle that's shaping up to be.
Yeah, I mean, if college game, that's the same weekend as Notre Dame USC. So there's going to be some barn burners, but I'd imagine that's going to be college game day. It should be, because that begins that stretch, Dad, where you talk about all these teams playing each other, potentially knocking each other off. Oregon is on the road at Washington that week. 2 weeks later on the road to play Utah, and then 2 weeks later home against USC. So we're going to get the round robin. Pretty much all their schedules line up like that, but it is nice to see. And we thought this weekend, at least I did, going into the Oregon and Colorado game, and Dan Lanning said as much. Like, Dan Lanning after the game said, we knew we were going to get more eyeballs on us because of what Deion Sanders has done for the sport right now and the life that he's injected into the sport. And he's absolutely right. And I think the same thing is starting to happen for Washington just because they've been so overwhelming on offense right now. This is a team that's gone out there and blitzed people through the first few weeks of the season, even this weekend on what felt like an off night, going up against the Justin Wilcox defense and torching them the way that they did. There's a lot of respect that's going towards the Pac-12 in this year. And so I'm excited for all those teams to play, because we're not really going to see that tested for Michigan and Georgia until way later in the season. We're going to get answers a lot sooner. And I have a feeling if Washington or Oregon really asserts their dominance in a couple of these games, we're going to watch them potentially creep up into the top 5 and maybe flirt with that 1 spot.
Listen, I agree. Between SEC, Big Ten, it's SEC, Big Ten, and Washington, right? ACC, I mean, Florida State, and who maybe Duke. Listen, if Duke can keep going, you never know. But right now, if there's a 1-loss Pac-12 team and a 1-loss ACC team, I don't see any way the ACC overtakes the Pac-12 in having a spot in the committee's Final Four.
I would say this, the ACC also really interesting, right? Because Florida State right now looks like your golden goose, but lurking there in the distance, you've got down to the teens. An undefeated North Carolina team that's hanging out there with one of the best quarterbacks in college football. Undefeated Duke, who's going to have their shot this week at home hosting Notre Dame. And then undefeated 4-0 Miami, who has gotten no buzz nationally in the conversation, despite an out-of-conference win against Texas A&M that didn't feel all that close. But Florida State, it's still a team that looks like a playoff team, right? I don't know if I can say they look like a championship team. Ugly game against Boston College. Could have lost had a former walk-on kicker not missed an easy field goal for Clemson in that game this past weekend down in Death Valley. And so I think that's a team that, as we go forward here in conference play, is going to have to reassert themselves a little bit more, but still firmly in the mix. A lot of interesting moving and shaking as we keep getting more information about this college football season. We'll get more information about some important injuries in the NFL next on GoJo and Golic.
So the Chargers get into the win column finally in week 3 with a brain fart, back and forth, exciting game against the Vikings. But even when the Chargers win, they lose. Mike Williams tearing his ACL. He's going to be out for the season. GoJo, a huge blow here for the Chargers. However, there are some talented wideouts that will be stepping up to fill his shoes, which are quite large.
Yeah, it's unfortunate and sad. Mike Williams has always been a guy that has played a little bit banged up. He's such a gifted athlete and can contort. Is almost the same as like Anthony Davis, Dad, where he's such a large, gifted athlete and can contort his body in so many ways that unfortunately the risk of nicks and bumps pop up. This obviously supersedes that. He had been having a phenomenal game and a great season so far. Happy he got the payday back in 2022, but this Chargers offense, you know, you look at the effect overall, obviously devastated for the player, but for the Chargers offense overall, Dad, I worry a lot less about them because right now it's the defense that's been the problem on that team.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, especially in stopping the run. So that's why they need all the firepower they can get on the offensive side of the ball. We've seen Herbert throw for, 1 million yards early on in his career, but they're not balanced enough. Their defense at times has a tough time holding up, so losing any kind of weapon on the offensive side of the ball is going to be tough. And that's the team that we thought has been an underachieving team. The Raiders, who I just covered in their loss to the Steelers, just look lost right now. It's somewhat amazing the step back that they have taken, and the Denver Broncos just gave up 70. I mean, so they're still, when you're supposed to compartmentalize and put things away and move on to the next one, that's a tough one to do, to put it away. So we thought it was going to be the Chargers, if not maybe challenging the Chiefs, but maybe have that chance to be a wild card if there was going to be one out of the AFC West. But this is a major blow to that side of the ball, which is the side of the ball that needs to carry the team.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's kind of what it feels like right now. Quentin Johnston, their rookie first-round pick, is there. Darius Davis, his other classmate as well from TCU. Josh Palmer. Like, there's a full arsenal in this receiver room. Yeah. And eventually going to get Austin Eckler back, who's another really capable receiver out of that running back room. But, yeah, Dad, overall for the Chargers, it's probably as bad as you can feel coming off of a win for a team in the NFL this weekend, right? I know the margins are close in this league. You never apologize for winning, all the cliches that we hear, but between the continued decision-making from the head coach, Brandon Staley, the lack of production matching talent on defense. I mean, you had J.C. Jackson as a healthy scratch this weekend, coming off the knee injury from last year, but one of your high-paid corners. It just doesn't seem like this is something that is built for top-end success outside of the quarterback, who just continues to put a flamethrower to defenses. Yeah,
he really does. So it's a team that needs to take care of their business. Now, they're considered one of the teams more on the worst side. But, you have the Raiders coming up, who I just mentioned, and talked about not playing well. Then you have the Chiefs or the Cowboys and the Chiefs, which is a tough stretch. But then you have the Bears and the Jets, which are two teams that can get had. We haven't talked about the bad side of the NFL yet, and those are two teams that you talk about for it. Still kind of don't know what the Jets are doing at the quarterback position. But, the Chargers, if they can take care of the business in those games that they should and maybe pull one off against the better teams, who knows where they can end up. But like I said, it just took a real damning blow to lose Mike Williams.
Yep, but you have the good fortune of playing in a division that outside of you and the Chiefs right now really does not look like there's going to be much of a fight put up by the bottom half of that division as you get those games twice a year. Let's keep moving it forward here, Emerson, and look towards the NFC South that also may have had a injury that could change the course of a lot of this division.
Yeah, for sure, Mike. Like when Saints quarterback Derek Carr, he was just lying face down on the grass at Lambeau Field on Sunday. It looked scary. It looked like it would be an extremely serious injury that he may have sustained. But 24 hours later, Dennis Allen giving us an update, and the outlook is a lot more positive here for Carr and the Saints.
Well, Derek's got a sprained AC joint. We'll evaluate him as he goes throughout the week this week. I think we dodged a bullet there in terms of anything of real, significance. I think we're kind of saying week to week, but again, he felt better today than he did, yesterday. So we're not making any decisions today. We're not ruling anything out. We'll see where he's at as the week goes on.
All right, Mike, New Orleans did not move the ball, too, when Derek Carr was out. They looked like last year's team, which was like carried by a great defense and an offense that just could not score enough.
Yeah, and you know, you still have capable receivers in that room. Jameis Winston didn't come out and play bad objectively.
No.
He's a quarterback that you know can get it done. And boy, his value, as we talked about, you know, in recent weeks after the Jets injury, about some quarterbacks you might probe for trade. New Orleans holding on to him, proving incredibly valuable, having been with that program for a while, and Dennis Allen too. Because Daddy takes over a team like this is still an infinitely winnable division for them. Now, this injury for Derek Carr, I heard Dan Orlovsky talking about it. I know you're the master of shoulder injuries as a guy with plenty of hardware and scars to show for it, but this AC sprain is a pain tolerance injury, right?
Yes.
It's going to be what Derek Carr can go out there and weather.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, there's obviously pain-killing shots if you want to go down that road. Of careful how much you numb up, but you can get rid of the pain in certain ways, and how much you can deal with, and how much it affects you mechanically as well. It's different for a D lineman, for me, to play with shoulder injuries. If I want to stick a needle in something or do something of what I have to do to as opposed to a quarterback, you know, in throwing a ball, if it's a throwing shoulder, even if it's not, it can still be obviously a painful thing. So there are differences there. But, you know, as you mentioned about Jameson, he came in and he did fine, but there's a reason they went out and got Derek Carr and didn't stay with Jameis Winston, right? I mean, there's a reason for that. And you have Olave, you have Thomas, you've got Alvin Kamara coming back this week. So that should, again, bolster between the rushing attack and the passing attack, a nice little safety valve or main receiver for Jameis at times as well. But like other teams we've talked about, it's a team that the defense is going to carry them in a division where, just like we were talking about last year, even though Tom Brady was involved, there's got to be a winner, right? Because there was a losing record that went to the playoffs there. You have three teams at 2-1. Let's count out Carolina. They're 0-3. They're not going anywhere. Tampa Bay, we didn't think they were, but you have to give them credit for still being 2-1, but you got to wonder where it's going to go now. So it's going to be between Atlanta and New Orleans, and I think it'll be New Orleans. But let's see what Jameis Winston can do with this team if, in fact, he has to play a significant amount of time before Carr gets back.
Yeah, we talked to Aaron Schatz from FTN before the season, and he mentioned this could be a two playoff team division just based on the ease of the schedule for the Falcons and the Saints. But man, this feels like watching a bar fight with a bunch of drunks right now, where you're just waiting to see who comes out on the other side. It ain't cute, it ain't pretty. There doesn't seem to be a lot of tact to it, but somebody's got to do it, because this is also the NFC and the expanded playoff era, and that's how we got to live. Last one here, Dad. Jimmy Garoppolo enters the concussion protocol this week. So some decisions going to be made there if they're going to go the veteran route for the backup on the roster, or give Aiden O'Connell potentially a spin, who was the star in the preseason for the Las Vegas Raiders.
Well, listen, you know, Brian Hoyer, who's played for a number of teams and is that veteran you're talking about that's been around for a long, long time, was their head coach, Josh McDaniels. He and Brian were together in New England. In all honesty, I'd probably be looking at the young kid O'Connell to see what he can do, all depending if Garoppolo is going to be out, if he's going to, you know, the concussion, if you're going to be out a week or two. Maybe you want the veteran in there to kind of keep the ship. Well, quite honestly, the ship's got to be getting a lot better. The ship's not running right now. And Devontae Adams, boy, you could tell, you heard his sound after the game. He is getting really, really frustrated for being one of the best receivers in the league, and that team just not playing well. So that it will be an interesting decision if, in fact, Jimmy G is out, is do you go with the veteran Brian Hoyer, who knows the system like the back of his hand, or do you see what the young guy can do?
Yeah, you talk about coaches that are certainly on the hot seat. Josh McDaniels got to feel like he's in that mix, because the situation's grown frustrating. Devontae Adams has like 175 yards in a game where it felt like he was the only one they could count on there. None of recreating the Patriots in Sin City seems to have gone the way that anyone wanted. Shocking, considering we've watched Patriot assistants for years try and recreate Bill's magic out there. He's tried to do it here with even more personnel and players, but to no real avail right now. That seems like another one, unfortunately. This current Raiders regime does not seem like the one that's going to deliver them any sort of promise. Coming up next, are they, though, the most hopeless team in the NFL? Abandon all hope, ye who enter this conversation of 0-3 teams, next.
Welcome back to a Tuesday edition of GoJo and Golic. Let me tell you what, the stamp of death going 0-3, starting 0-3 in NFL history. Last team to do that and make the postseason, 2018 Houston Texans. No team has made the playoffs after an 0-3 start since the league expanded to a 17-game regular season. Wow, that's a long time. That's like 3 years. And since 1979, 6 teams have overcome an 0-3 start to make the postseason. So I was just doing some serious research, and I believe in this span, it's about 356 teams that have started 0-3 here, GoJo, and 6 making the postseason. There's what, like 4 now left?
4.
Bengals almost became 5 last night. Which one is in the most hopeless situation? What do you think?
Yeah, talking about one of these things is not like the other when you looked at the Bengals and this grouping of teams that were almost defeated. As we sit here now with the Bears, Vikings, Broncos, and Panthers, Dad, all at different junctures of their team life cycle, all at different places in their team building. I think the answer overwhelmingly pretty easily is the Denver Broncos here, just because of the situation they're in with their quarterback that still is financially hamstringing them going forward, and plenty of other places on that roster that they need to fill. Everybody else here, when you look at the Minnesota Vikings that are coming up towards the end of what seems to be the Kirk Cousins era there, his contract expires in the spring, doesn't seem like he's going to be their quarterback next year. The Panthers just getting started with a rookie quarterback. The Chicago Bears able to get out and change that quarterback, even though I don't think he's fully the problem there with that organization. The Denver Broncos just feel a little bit more landlocked in their hell right now. And that's not even to say that Russell Wilson has been the biggest problem with this team, because he was not this last weekend.
No, he does. He doesn't seem to be the biggest problem. But you, like you said, they're locked in there money wise. They're in the toughest division, right? I mean, without question, the toughest division. So they have to overcome that. Man, I saw Garrett Bowles, their offensive lineman, their tackle, being interviewed. That dude sounded so depressed, of saying, I've been here 7 years and we haven't won. I mean, and just not doing any winning. It has been difficult for that squad. Now they changed ownership. They bring in a high profile coach in Sean Payton, who has a Super Bowl, to his name. And so he's going to have to get a little bit of time, obviously, to see what he can turn that team into. But you have that quarterback. And if that quarterback coach relationship can start to get better, then we'll see for the hope there. Again, you push Carolina aside because they have a new quarterback and they're just building out there. And you're right about Minnesota. They're going to be starting the Kirk Cousins era, or without Kirk Cousins, because he's probably going to be gone after this year. So what direction do they go? I would imagine as they're sitting at 0-3 now, the fans are probably saying, hey, let's keep that going, because there's a lot of quarterbacks out there to be had. And if we're not going to have Cousins, do we start over with a rookie or get a veteran, because their defense is still an issue there as well? And then the Chicago Bears, because that was the biggest talk in the offseason. Should they, get another quarterback and trade Justin Fields? And I think you were too, in the camp of no. I like Justin Fields. Let's see where he could go with the talent around them. But that's the key. I think kind of like the Raiders, especially on defense, the people they have been bringing in just aren't working. They're not bringing in the right players. And you could almost say that you can say that in Chicago as well. And I know a lot of it will be put on the coach, and in this case too, the offensive coordinator and the quarterback, Luke Getsy and Justin Fields, in getting that working relationship going, because it doesn't seem they are getting it, just like Matt Canada and Kenny Pickett, though last game was a little better against the Raiders, but they had been kind of struggling as well. So but in Chicago, if you want to go down the road of making a change, you can do that now, because you don't have a lot of money invested in Justin Fields. If in fact you tried to make this year that year to see what was going to happen before you had to commit any further, and they didn't have to commit after this year. They could have done the 5th-year option, blah, 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 that whole thing. But they don't have to do that. So they're one, though, from a talent aspect, Mike, they may be in the worst shape of players they're bringing in that are just not getting it done.
I mean, I think Denver on defense has been a talent hemorrhage over the last couple of years. And we saw that on display this last weekend in that game against Miami. Like, I guess for me, the hopeless conversation is all about what we've discussed here. It's, do you have an escape hatch or not? Eric Sandstrom on our YouTube comments said he put up his Minnesota Vikings there. But as we've talked about, you've got young, incredibly talented players on offense, a head coach in Kevin O'Connell who was able to coach you into a winning season, a playoff season, his first year at the helm, albeit one we knew was primed for regression. And defensively, you're also turning over some older talent there. It's a scheme adjust. We'll see. I mean, on that side, Brian Flores adhering, you talk about live by the blitz, die by the blitz. That man chose to go out on it despite it getting absolutely torched by Justin Herbert in this last game. But again, quarterback, we bring them up in this situation not because they're all the root of the problem. Kirk Cousins is on pace to throw for like 50 touchdowns and 6,000 yards this season. He's on pace for what would be one of the most historically great NFL quarterback seasons in league history. But it's the position that can change your fortunes and outlook as a franchise the most quickly. And so for them in Chicago, it feels like you've got that out. For Carolina, you're still waiting to see, hey, we got to put receivers that can get open around Bryce Young. We've got to continue to build that roster around him. I just keep going back to Denver because there's so much that has to get fixed. And while Russell Wilson might not be the problem and could continue to play better, Dad, as the season goes along, he's not at this point in his career in the style of offense that they're going to play enough of a difference maker to lift the rest of what's a bad roster right now in Denver.
So let's look at this, right? Carolina, the quarterback's not going anywhere. Denver this year, and for would seem a bit. Denver obviously is not going anywhere. In Chicago, he's going to be there this year, whether he finishes the season or not. He's going to be there. The best quarterback of the four teams we're talking about playing right now is Kirk Cousins, right?
Yes.
At what point, though, because he's going to be a free agent, you're not going to tag him. That's an incredibly big number. You're probably not going to sign him to a new deal.
No.
So at what point do you possibly trade him? I mean, you have to think about, if you let him go as a free agent, if you're not going to tag him, you get nothing for him. If you trade him, you can get something for him. Their next game is the Panthers. They should get a win there. Then it's the Chiefs, then it's the Bears, then it's the 49ers. So, bad team, excellent team, bad team, excellent team. So I wonder at what point, remember the trade deadline is usually beginning in November?
Yep.
At what point do you decide, okay, if we're depending on where our record is, do we say he's not going to be our quarterback of the future? Do we get something for him, even though he's the best of the four quarterbacks that we're talking about right now?
Well, and I mean, we've heard everyone talk about, a team like the Jets. We've heard people whisper for that since they're desperate coming off injury. But if you believe Aaron Rodgers is going to come back next year, Dad, I mean, maybe doing the one season loaner with Kirk Cousins could plug that gap. In the meantime, if you have trouble looking across the aisle at your all-world defense in New York and telling them, hey, this is going to be a burn season, we got to wait till next year, maybe you could make the most of that. Is there any other team that you look at and say could or should try and push the gas pedal and go and think about acquiring Kirk Cousins?
Boy, that's a great question, because all the teams that that are in it are very secure at the quarterback position. So I don't see that. And if you're trading Kirk, is he just going to be a loaner, or whatever team he would go to, would they decide that they want to sign him to a long-term deal? Again, as I'm going through these teams, even older quarterbacks, I just don't know if they would go down that road of doing it. I can't see. And with the Jets, I get it if you don't want to give up assets for a guy that might be there just 1 year. So maybe saying that's I'm sure it is a lot easier said than actually being done. But I'm just trying to think from Minnesota and a business side to try and get something for Cousins before he's not on that team anymore. But that would be interesting to see where he may go. It would have to be, I would imagine, with what we would consider a non-contender at this point.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right in that it's probably going to take a little while longer in the season to jostle this loose. The one that gets interesting to me, and it would just be more funny in the poetic term because it would be opening at the close here. What if things continue to go sideways in Washington for Sam Howell?
Oh,
you bring him on back home. New regime. Everyone's changed out there. It's a different world here. You get him in that offense with Eric Bieniemy, and now all of a sudden see what's cooking here. I don't want to throw it. And I know they've They've gone in, they've tried to build this around Sam Howell right now, but that would be the funniest possible outcome, which makes it the one that I am rooting for now, is Kirk Cousins in the reunion with the Washington Commanders.
Yeah, sure you are. Yeah, why not just kind of throw them? That's what we like to see. It gives us more stuff to talk about.
Amen. Speaking of stuff to talk about, plenty to still get to in the NFL weekend next here on GoJo and Golic.
So if you've been paying attention at all to GoJo and Golic here, last couple weeks we had Lions fullback Jason Cabinda on the show to give us the inside scoop on Detroit's season opening win at Kansas City. And we had such a great time with Jason that we invited him back 2 days before the Lions aim for their second straight win at Lambeau Field. Let's send it over to GoJo and Golic right now with our new bestie of the show.
This who before we get to Thursday night, he came in rocking his college colors this morning. Penn State with a great win. So is it the Nittany Lions year finally this year, Jason, huh?
It's our year, man. We're going to the playoffs, man. I'm saying it. I'm putting it in the air right now.
Well, I think that's the thing about it is you get the chance with who you play. And as we were talking before we came on air, it's a shame that the three best teams are all on the same side of the bracket here, you know, and someone slips in from the West but you have your chance. What is it on October 21st, Ohio State, November 11th, Michigan. Now, as former players in college for all of us, we can now look ahead. As you talk to coaches and players, you know, right now, Penn State's looking ahead to Northwestern. That's all they'll talk about. But come on, that's going to be a blowout. Right. So we can talk about these big games. Do you feel as good this year as you have ever felt about this Penn State team?
Absolutely, man. We're solid. I think we got a great defense, great D-line. I mean, they play hungry out there. The offense, I mean, this is the first time in a while we've had a Penn State team that can really lean on that offensive line. You saw that during the Iowa game. I mean, 17-play drive, 13-play drive, just cranking out 4-yard, 5-yard runs. I mean, just breaking the morale of that defense. So seeing that was a super positive thing for us. I don't think we'll be able to do that in a long time. So I really think we got it this year. Drew Aller, obviously, is a great prospect, man. He's starting to look real comfortable in there. Dude's got a cannon. I mean, he's processing, going through his progressions. It's really good to see as a young quarterback.
I got to see it and cover it for the first time last year, but take me inside a Penn State whiteout experience from a player perspective, because I maintain there aren't a lot of theaters in college football that are as good and compelling and wild as that event.
What I can tell you, man, is there is absolutely nothing like that. You know, you got some stadiums like the Big House in Michigan, you know, Ohio State's, you know, stadium where the fans come to watch the show. At a Penn State whiteout, the fans come to be the show. That's the only way I can describe it, man. I mean, they're screaming their heads off the whole time. I can't tell you the amount of false starts and pregame penalties that crowd causes for opposing offenses. So it is a great experience. There's really nothing like it in the world.
I tell you what else is nothing like it, as two guys who played at ND and traveled to Penn State, is getting in and out of that godforsaken place. I mean, it takes forever to get in and out of there.
One way in and one way out.
I know. Believe me, I know. And we have dealt with it. Also, let people know goes on in the locker room. I know you at least have one player in Sam Laporta who went to Iowa. Do you guys still in the locker rooms make wagers on your college teams?
Wagers, I wouldn't say. No. We obviously we got a lot of gambling issues going on in the league right now, so we're staying away from all that.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, man. I made Sam Laporta do about 50 push-ups though for that win. So
there we go. Almost as many push-ups as total offensive yards for Iowa in that game. So a tough scene for the Hawkeyes. Let's get to you guys though with the Lions here, coming off a win this weekend against the Falcons. A nice bounce back after week 2 in Seattle. What'd you guys learn about yourself coming off that loss and going out and getting a dub this last week?
I mean, obviously, we faced some adversity last week, you know, losing in overtime and stuff like that. So to be able to hit that reset button, man, go back to work, prepare again, get ready, you know, just really have the mindset going into that next game. We knew that we had to come to this game playing really hungry. I think our defense really showed that, man. I mean, that was it right there. I think we held them to 6 points there. I mean, they couldn't really do much. You know, we held them and made them one-dimensional. We stopped the run, all those things. Then our offense, you know, was just very patient. You know, we cranked out some drives. You know, we had a couple of drive killers with some penalties that we were able to overcome. So I love the direction this team is going in. I think we had a real statement win at home that we really needed, and obviously we got a big one this week in Green Bay to kick off the division. Yeah,
you do. Kick off division plays. You mentioned both you and Green Bay 2-1. They now with a different quarterback than Aaron Rodgers in Jordan Love. Talk about, though, before we get to the game, the preparation. So much being made of. Now, back when I played, it was just Thursday night was really the Thanksgiving games. And later on, you started playing more Thursday nighters. Now every team usually gets a Thursday nighter. And we talk about players and health and safety and preparation. Talk to us about the preparation of how different it is in a short week as opposed to a regular week.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's super tough on the body. So I think the biggest focus inside the building is really rest and recovery, getting everybody's bodies back and everybody ready to play again back on Thursday. So in order to do these kinds of weeks, I mean, you got to be super locked in. It's all about the mental details, all the mental work. You know, obviously, you know, a lot of walkthroughs and jog-throughs, not a whole ton of full speed work during the week because we're trying our best to get our bodies back. So I think that's really what it is. It's mentally locking in, making sure we're on the details, staying in the playbook, and really trying to keep it as simple as possible so the guys can just go out there and really just play free.
Speaking of being mentally locked in, the details of this, you talked about your defense. Can I grade the stanky leg performance from Aiden Hutchinson in year 2?
I absolutely loved it. I think he really hit it, man. It was good. It was good. We were all on sideline laughing, man. It was good to see.
What makes Aiden special? He's a top overall pick for you guys. Obviously, he's building on a strong end to his season 1 campaign, but what stuck out about him early on in his career for you guys?
To me, the biggest thing that I saw, even just watching in practice, is the dude has one gear. And you just love a player like that, man, where it's 1,000 miles per hour. Every play, every practice, every walkthrough, the dude prepares the same. He's the same guy every day. And, you see the guys who practice like that, who take every practice like it's a game. All of the stuff that they do in practice, it really translates. So, the motor that kid has is unbelievable, man. And obviously, he's a special talent, man. Another one of those, Bosa type bodies with explosion and an array of pass rush moves. So, I mean, it was awesome to see him really get into it last game and find his rhythm. And I think that'll continue for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I like the way they're playing him on both sides and down over the guard sometimes on passing situations, really showing his versatility and maybe find a weak spot on that O-line to put your best pass rusher. I think it's a smart move. Looking ahead to this game, give us a little bit about what you see about on this Green Bay defense that you'll be going against.
I mean, I think they're a solid defense, man. They're a solid defense. Still got Jair over there, good DBs, Savage and at safety there. But I just really think this is a team that we can lean on. We got our O-line. Obviously, we're a little bit beat up, but our O-line is going to be a huge for us. The trenches is going to be huge for us, and winning the battle up front, being physical, and moving the chains. Just taking it one first down at a time and kind of going from there offensively.
We talked a lot about Jahmyr Gibbs. We know Dave Montgomery dealing with that quad right now. What have you been talking with the rookie about in that backfield about the opportunity for him here to really insert himself as this offense needs him a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we've seen him have some splash plays here and there, but I don't think we've really seen his potential just yet. So that's what I'm really excited for, man. He's going to have a real good breakout game where you guys are going to really be able to see his full skill set in the run games and the pass game. I mean, there's really nothing that he can't do. I mean, he can run in between the tackles. He can run outside. He can be a gadget. He can be in the pass game, running choices, all those things. So I'm really excited just to kind of see his full array of skill set in this game coming in.
I'm wondering and every player is different. So we're just talking about Penn State, right? And looking at the schedule. And we know in college, when all of us were in college, there are certain games, even though you need to take all your opponents, you can't take them lightly. There are like when you got Ohio State coming up or Michigan, there's a little more juice to it. How does that translate for you in the NFL when you come now to your first division opponent or when you play a division opponent as opposed to somebody else in the league? Do you still get that same kind of feeling, or is it muted a little more in the NFL?
No, I mean, obviously, we treat every game the same. There's no doubt about it. But when it comes to the division, at the end of the day in the NFL, you got to win your division. So when you have division games, it is important to go out there and be your best and be on your A game every single time you have a division game. So there obviously is a little bit more emphasis on bringing those games. Obviously, we'll be on the road, so we're going to have to bring our juice over to Lambeau. We know that stadium well. And we just got to go out there, play 1,000 miles per hour, play our game, play physical, be violent, be smart. And I think we'll handle our business.
It's going to be exciting. We're all looking forward to Thursday night, and a quality game like that in that package. Al Michaels has to be thanking his lucky stars. One big picture in the NFL right now, coming off this last weekend, we've heard a lot of opinions about this from former players and other people. The Dolphins hanging 70 on the Broncos this weekend. You just don't see scores like that in the NFL very often. From a player standpoint, any issue with a team like that in this league, seemingly running up the score like that, keeping pushing the pedal on the gas that late in the game?
I mean, no, this is the NFL. I mean, the other team, they get paid too. At the end of the day, I will say though, I don't even think I have been on a team in my entire life that scored 70 points. I've probably done it in Madden a couple of times, but besides that, I don't think I've seen it. So obviously, McDaniel's and them, they're doing a great job over there. With their offense, they got Tyreek, they got Jalen, they got a lot of weapons, and Tua's, he's really playing his ass off right now. So, they're definitely an offense that, a lot of defenses need to find answers to right now, and they don't seem to have them. So, it's a tough task. It's a tough task with that team right now.
It's definitely a tough out, and one of the exciting teams like the Detroit Lions this NFL season. Jason, we appreciate the time as always, man. Hopefully we get to keep doing this with you as the season goes along. Best of luck with the short week here. We're excited to watch.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, guys, for having me on.
Thanks, man.
as Jason Cabinda, again, Lions, super back, fullback, tight end, whatever you need him to be, he's got it for you in that backfield there. We will talk to Dolphins tight end, Durham Smythe, coming up here. Speaking of that Miami Dolphins team in about 15 minutes as we get a look at some of the speed on tape there. But, Dad, why don't we look as we talk about the rest of this NFL weekend at what we had here with the NFL Week 3 superlatives. We started doing this on Tuesday, kind of put a bow on the weekend that we saw. Now we got the Monday night games in there. I want to start off with that Dolphins team, Dad. This is my Ricky Bobby team of the week. I just want to go fast. I saw Field Yates, ESPN NFL Insider, post this from Next Gen Stats. The 6 fastest ball carriers in a game so far this season have all been Miami Dolphins players. Number 1, Tyreek Hill. Number 2, Devon Achane. Number 3, Tyreek Hill. Number 4, Raheem Mostert. Number 5, Tyreek Hill. And number 6, Devon Achane. It has been an absolute tour de force of guys with track backgrounds on that team.
I mean, I don't know how you can't do that. I mean, just for argument's sake, I'll look at a fact that you had a backup quarterback in Gardner Minshew do what he did and get the Colts a win in the absence of their rookie quarterback in Anthony Richardson, even after he did a Dan Orlovsky and stepped out of the back of the end zone, still helping that team to get to a win like he did. So even with the kicker having the great day that we talked about yesterday. But it's really, I just wanted to mention another team. It's really tough to go against Miami because just as Jason said, and we have talked about, you just don't see it. You never see something like that, and I don't know if we will again.
Well, and especially just, Dad, with that kind of speed. Like, I was talking with Charlie Kravitz, who's the producer over at the Dominique Foxworth show yesterday, about what Mike McDaniel kind of represents. It seems like the next evolutionary step of every part of the Shanahan-McVay coaching tree, right? Like, you had Sean McVay get to it first, and we saw, all right, this team that uses incredibly creative 11 personnel, moves the pocket a lot with Jared Goff, all these great play action reps, a running back then in Todd Gurley, who was really doing great things for them. Then you get Kyle Shanahan, even more creative run game here, more versatile jack of all trades, positionless football going on. And on both of those teams, there were fast guys, but you look at the Sean McVay-led Rams, Cooper Kupp's your best receiver, not physically going to overwhelm anyone. You look at the 49ers, Raheem Mostert and some of the guys that are now on the Dolphins in that backfield. You had track stars in that backfield, but your best receivers on that team, even now, aren't necessarily guys, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, that are known for their game-breaking speed.
Right.
Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, who wasn't even on the field this last weekend, and now you throw Achane in there as well. You've got track stars that can stretch the field at every level of an offense that's built with much the same gadget, play with people's eyes as those last two teams. And so what they're capable of seems like we're looking at maybe a resetting of the ceiling of what's been the best offensive coaching tree in the NFL right now. So,
back in the day in the NBA when the center was a true center position, when you just, dropped it down low in the paint, back to the basket, back your way in, the term was you can't teach size, right? And in this, what has always been right along with that, and it's appropriate for Miami, is you can't teach speed. The difference here in the NFL is we always talk about speed and the fact of taking or opening the top of a defense, right? Sending your guy in that go route and stretching out the defense long. But what it means also now is short routes that turn into long runs. I mean, you have guys, when you have speed like that, it's just about we keep talking about Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan offense. Just get the ball in the hands of your playmakers. Well, there are no better playmakers to potentially break a 3-yard pass into an 80-yard touchdown than the Miami Dolphins. So it's not just about speed kills going over the top and stretching out a defense. It's get the ball in the hands of those fast guys, and they can make something happen near the line of scrimmage or 20 yards downfield. It doesn't matter.
And the scheme has made it so difficult for defenses who already have to guard against all that speed to worry about all that eye candy. I was trying to think of an analogy, Dad, for people that have never played football of what all that motion that you see in these offenses does to an opposing defense. Because we saw a lot of flat-footed Broncos defenders going up against the Dolphins. And I said, think about you're driving a car when an animal runs across the road or someone runs across the street. What do? You tap your brakes. That's all they're trying to do is get the defense to tap the brakes on this. So you got Tyreek Hill going in motion right at the snap, and all of a sudden as a defender, mentally or physically, you tap the brakes a little bit, and they're fast enough to go right by you and make you pay. So Ricky Bobby, team of the week there, Dad. Let's go for this superlative. The best former Eagles coach of the week. You're going to have a tough time picking this one as Jonathan Gannon and Shane Steichen both go out and get wins over top-tier competition. The Colts beating one of the AFC favorites in the Baltimore Ravens, and the Cardinals beating one of the NFC's overall favorites in the Dallas Cowboys, both with their with what would be considered backup quarterbacks in these spots as well, Dad. So who's your pick out of these two?
Oh, to me, it's got to be Arizona and Gannon, right? I mean, to beat Dallas, to put up 28 against that defense, what we were talking about as the best defense possibly in all of football, and the way they've been playing on that. And as obviously you see him put up 28 points, it wasn't the one thing you might think of, oh, maybe the defense contributed. No, this was 28 by the offense against this Dallas Cowboy defense. And then the Arizona defense did a nice job holding that Cowboy offense, which was sans 3 of their starting offensive linemen, which really hurts your running game especially. But I'd have to go there. I don't think anybody expected that. Everybody's seeing Arizona as kind of that team that wants to set themselves up for one of the top picks to get one of the quarterbacks out. But again, whenever we talk about that, remember, we're never talking about the players. The players want to go out and win, and that's what the Arizona Cardinals players showed in this game. They showed that it doesn't matter your record, it doesn't matter what people think of you, that on any Sunday, man, if you're playing ball right, that you can get the win.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's a reminder. Yeah, it is. It's difficult because football is such an interconnected game. There are more players on the field. It's a sport with more randomness inherently baked in because of all the violence where tanking gets really hard. But I'm with you. I would go with the Eagles just for the level of competition. I understand the Cowboys were down a bunch of guys in the offensive line, but on both sides of the ball, Jonathan Gannon came in and was sort of a meme, right? You had the early pew, pew, pew thing with him and Kyler Murray talking. You had the weird pregame speech during the preseason about, did you take the bus to the game or did you drive your car? Yeah. All this stuff that eerily reminiscent of Nick Sirianni's start in Philadelphia seems to have begotten them a pretty well-coached team that, by the way, brought Josh Dobbs over at the end of the preseason. Like, the guy hasn't been here all that long and has gone out and played well-coached, really competent football for you, specifically on defense, too, which, as we've talked about, when it's your specialty, you got to go ahead and make that sing. Dad, let's get to the worst streak of this weekend. The Jets have now lost 15 in a row against New England. You had Garrett Wilson, their wide receiver, come out and say before the game it's unacceptable. And I have to imagine after we saw some of that frustration boiling on the sideline, he's starting to look at the quarterback situation there and feel like that's unacceptable.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he is. And I still don't, we can get into this more. I don't know why they haven't gotten a veteran. Like I said, not to come in and start right away. It could still be Zach Wilson's team, but at least that veteran can learn the system. And if you need him to come in, like they probably do now, you could put somebody in. So I'm just stunned at the way they're going. And it's a horrible, obviously, streak that they have going right now that looks to continue. If Zach Wilson is still the quarterback, but it's all still not on him. Others have to step up as well. Quickly for me, it's the one that was broken. Pittsburgh hadn't beaten the Raiders on the road since 1995, and they finally broke that streak. So that was the streak going into the game that was horrible. And in 95, Toy Story was the big movie at the theater. Hootie and the Blowfish were the big winners at the Billboard Music Awards. Gas was $1.11 per gallon. That's how long it had been since Pittsburgh beat the Raiders on the road.
And we have Darius Rucker slinging NFL merch and a Toy Story game getting ready to come up in the NFL. Time is a flat circle.
All right, so before the break, GoJo mentioning that really sad streak by the Jets, 15 straight losses to New England. The offensive issues run very deep in New York, and Garrett Wilson has something he would like to say about that.
Just frustration that, you know, we're not moving the ball. That's what it was. You know, our defense was stringing together some stops, and you know, I felt like it was time to go. Time to put some points on the board. I'm frustrated we're not winning. You know, whatever reason that may be, you know, I'm trying to figure it out. You know, that's my job. I feel like I'm a player on this team, but, you know, everyone knows that about me, is that I don't play about losing and winning, you know, and when it's competition, you know, I'm with all that, and we haven't met the challenge the last 2 weeks, and that's where the, you know, frustration comes from. That's where the emotion comes from.
You know, you want to do what's working, and today it didn't feel like anything was really working, so we got to find a way to do something, you know. Got to find a way to do something.
All right, GoJo, who deserves the most heat for what's going down in New York?
So everyone's got to wear it, but unfortunately the quarterback's probably going to have to bear it, because it just is it's the thing you tried to address this offseason, right? And I think mentally, you know, I've heard Rob Saleh talk about how they've been trying to adjust. They had this offense built for Aaron, and now they're trying to retool this offense built for Zach. Like, I get it's Nathaniel Hackett, so it's not even a guy who had prior experience with Zach Wilson with this regime when he was the quarterback. But, Dad, the letdown from the rest of the team and the frustration that's building, you had 7 3-and-outs in this game. You gave up a safety on offense in addition to 3 sacks. You were barely right at 50% as far as a passer in Zach Wilson. And while he might not be fully at fault, we knew coming into the season, right? Protection up front, the offensive line were an issue everybody had circled. But with what the buildup was, with what your defense is, and with some of the weapons that still exist on that offense, it just seems inexplicable that they would continue to stick with Zach Wilson for results that just do not seem like they are capable this season. We heard all in the preseason about how Zach Wilson had improved, how having Aaron Rodgers there had helped him. He was going to grow in all these things, but having to put that in practice right away this season probably wasn't going to be the space that we saw that bear fruit. We all thought he might benefit from getting to sit back and not have live bullets going at him. And we've seen right now, this is the same Zach Wilson we had last season. There's not any sort of demonstrable difference between that guy and the one playing now.
No, and I don't know if there should be an expectation that you're going to see something different, right? 2 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, just over 50% completion. This is what you have. You might get a better game occasionally. You might get a worse game. I do not understand why they didn't get a veteran quarterback. And I don't even mean having to trade away assets, because I'm sure they're still going to put their eggs in the Aaron Rodgers basket next year, who, by the way, will be 40 coming off an ACL injury. So you want to talk about keeping your fingers crossed. Got hurt in 4 plays. Keeping your fingers crossed even for next year. But I don't understand why you didn't grab, and everybody keeps saying Carson Wentz, Nick Foles. Everybody keeps saying no.
Kirk Cousins, trade for him.
Well, that's the only thing. The only thing I'm going to say about that, Emerson, is if you trade and give up assets for a guy like that, and then you gave up assets, and then you're going to go back to Aaron Rodgers next year, you're giving up assets for that. I'm not even. And
also potentially ticking off Aaron Rodgers. Like, we've seen what happens when you make quarterback moves or moves in general around the roster that aren't signed off on
I agree.
by 12, now 8. That seems like a recipe.
It would be just like a one-year rental.
To that guy.
No, but what if he comes in and plays well? What if he comes in and plays really well, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait, you're just going to discard him with a 40-year-old coming in off an Achilles? I don't think that's the smoke they want right now. That's why I said get a veteran who's a free agent. And I know people are screaming, well, they're a free agent for a reason. I guarantee you they can be better than what Zach Wilson is doing and provide some more leadership and help that offense. It may not turn it all around, and you may just say, we're going to live with Zach Wilson and the results of it, but that's fine. I'm just thinking for everyone else in the locker room, Mike, to have a veteran that if Zach keeps struggling or the offense keeps struggling, just to say, let's put this veteran in and let's see what can happen. And nothing may happen. Nothing good may happen. I understand that. But I do not understand why they're not giving themselves that option right now.
Rob Saleh said yesterday the offense has had to adjust on the fly in the aftermath of the Rodgers injury. In other words, it was built for Rodgers, and now they're trying to find a new identity with Wilson at quarterback. Dan, I don't know how Jets fans do it, but also in that locker room, the mental gymnastics to keep trying to justify Zach Wilson as the starting quarterback, who, listen, could be a good guy. Like, I don't want to make this a total dump on Zach Wilson, but he is not a good enough quarterback for this team, given the roster they have, to accomplish anywhere near the dreams that they had setting out for this season. Yeah. And we saw that frustration spilling over on the sideline. It's increasingly difficult, I'd imagine, if you're a member of the rest of this team, to hear your head coach publicly talking like this, as much as you buy into Rob Saleh, when you're laying it on the line and don't believe that you're getting even average at that position, Dad. Because to your point, the other guys you brought in aren't going to be great. We know enough about who Carson Wentz is at this point to know he's not going to be a guy that makes you great at this juncture of his career, but there's the hope that maybe he can come in and just get you to average based on being a veteran that's played a lot more winning football and losing football, but winning football in this league than Zach Wilson. So
I completely agree, because you're being led by your defense. Your defense and offense were going to be so complementary with Aaron Rodgers, but now you're squarely being led by your defense. So you need an offense that you can trust a little bit more. And I'm sorry, it's just not there with Zach Wilson right now. So again, I'll continue to say I don't understand the move, which costs you basically nothing to do something like this, just to have him there. And like we talked about, it can be for that locker room as well to say, okay, maybe we need a stabilizing veteran force there, even if we maybe we'll be a little better, but maybe not much better. But for that locker room, and again, these heated arguments on the sideline that are going on, I never put any credence to anything that happens while the game is going on. That doesn't bug me at all. But I can understand the frustration level of what this Jet team thought they were going to be offensively, and now 4 plays into the season, what they actually are. I can see there being a whole lot of frustration when it's not going their way.
The argument on that sideline, to me, feels a lot different than the argument on the Eagles sideline, because there you've got the bedrock of past performance.
Right.
A.J. Brown knows what Jalen Hurts is as a quarterback. He knows what they can be as an offense, and the frustration was they weren't living up to their standard. For Garrett Wilson, I'd imagine part of this has to feel like, oh, here we go again.
Yep.
Where I was the offensive rookie of the year last year, but felt like I had to make a lot of that magic happen on my own in an offense that was inconsistent around it. So I think the frustration in those spots comes from 2 very different places for this team. But Dad, as much as anything, in so many relationships in life, people just want to know that you're trying. And I think for the Jets right now, for the rest of that team, you'd like to see Joe Douglas, Rob Saleh, and the front office be trying at that position. Here, we heard at the very beginning them potentially exploring veteran options, but they positioned it to come in and be the backup. And I get at that point.
Yes.
You wanted to protect Zach Wilson's feelings. You wanted to protect a guy that you still thought might be able to help you, but we're getting enough of a reminder of the sample size again that's probably not going to be the case. And so whether it's Carson Wentz, whether it is giving up a little bit to go pry a backup like Jacoby Brissett free from somewhere, that would be something that maybe at least shows the rest of your team you're trying, and this isn't a lost season and another frustrating one yet again.
Yeah, and I'll say again, I don't know why they didn't do it right away and just say, whoever we bring in, you're coming in as the backup. This is Zach Wilson's offense for now, or Zach Wilson's offense, and let him do his thing, but be ready, with an eye wink saying,
hey,
for as long as Zach's
team.
And now Robert Saleh, when he asked about it, said that's a Joe Douglas question, putting it on the GM. So I will continue to say and will not change my opinion, even if it was a guy. And by the way, Matt Ryan already said, he has no interest in doing that right now, whether he was going to be a guy that was thought of or not. But I'll keep saying a Carson Wentz or a Nick Foles to come in and kind of steady the ship, or at least make it an offense that can be a little better than what they are, because you're still led by your defense. So let's see. I would be stunned if at some point they're not making some kind of a move.
Matt Ryan to come back behind an offensive line that struggled to protect even Aaron Rodgers, a much more mobile quarterback at this point in his career. Matt Ryan realized the television, they might say 28-3 jokes in front of me, but they can't hit me. And that's a decided step up in my lifetime. Coming up next, let's take a look inside and under the hood of the NFL's most high-powered offense. Next on GoJo and Golic.
All right, back here on GoJo and Golic, where we are lucky enough now to be joined by an individual, a member of the history-making Dolphins offense, hanging out right now with GoJo and Golic.
Yeah, very excited to welcome in. Now it's a tough weekend to bring up alma maters. We had Jason Cabinda
don't do
from
that.
the Lions before, who Penn State alum, very hyped for the weekend. We're pumped because we love this guy, Durham Smythe, Dolphins tight end, former Notre Dame tight end, who I just looked up now. Durham, year 6 for you in the NFL here, man. You're an old head now.
Year 6, man. It sneaks up on you. It sneaks up on you. It feels like just yesterday I got in. So, year 6 still rolling.
So proud. Year 6, and you played a lot of ball in your life. 6 years NFL, obviously college at Notre Dame. Can you even put into words what it was like on that sideline as you guys, I think you just scored 5 minutes ago again. I mean, of what it was like to put up 70 points in an NFL game?
I was talking to people on the sideline towards the end of the game, and we were kind of saying that we've never experienced anything like that, really at any level of football. Obviously it's a combination of things when something like that happens. Perfect storm, things are clicking, in all 3 phases. Some breaks go your way, and then all of a sudden you have 70 points. And I was looking around talking to people, and no one had really ever experienced anything like that. So it's definitely fun to be on the good side of
you definitely want to stick around. Are you like going up to McDaniel in the middle of all that? Because everyone seemed to be eating in that and like petitioning for plays for you in there. A-Chain and those guys got a bunch of runs. Do you start to try and go say, hey, maybe like some tight end throwback mixed in here?
That definitely crosses your mind. But when guys like our running backs and the guys that had the ball were running like they were, I wasn't about to stop that in any way. So if I was calling the plays, I would have continued to get them the ball as well. So I think when guys are kind of in a zone like that, you just kind of keep getting them the rock.
Yeah, 43 carries, 350 yards. You don't mess with that. I mean, these were college-esque numbers without question. I'm wondering, was anybody on the sideline aware? Did it start circulating of what the NFL record was? And you guys were 2 points away from that. And we were all saying, kick the damn field goal. I mean, this is the NFL, man. Do your thing. But was that talked about on the sideline?
I think really in those last 2 minutes, word kind of got around to a lot of the players. The coaches were obviously discussing it. And I think, at the end of the day, the right decision was made. If you're up by however many at the end of a game and it's not, approaching an NFL record, I think everyone's going to take a knee there. And like McDaniel said in his press conference, karma's a real thing. And so many things change in the NFL so quickly that, I remember in 2019 when we were here and we had a new staff and a lot of things were happening and we were getting rocked at home, and people don't forget those type of things. So I think ultimately it was the right decision to take a knee at the end of the game and kind of get out of there healthy.
So you mentioned a new regime for you guys now, another year under Coach McDaniel. What stuck out to you about him as he's settled in here in Miami and you guys have gotten used to what he brings as a head coach?
Yeah, I think more than anything at this point, it's just how calculated everything is. Obviously, when he came in last year, with the new scheme offensively for us, you could see that it was going to be an effective scheme in this league. It's been an effective scheme, wherever he's been, Atlanta, obviously in San Francisco, and now here. But I think it's just how calculated he is with play calling, with building plays off of each other, with really, I think using the pieces that he has. Obviously we have a wild amount of speed on our offense and kind of making plays that kind of emphasize that within the flow of the game. So everything is calculated, and when it's called the right way and everything's rolling, obviously this is a tough scheme, tough offense to stop.
Yeah, 36 points, 24 points, and 70 points in your 3 wins. You're one of 3 teams. You guys, San Francisco and Philadelphia, left undefeated. Your first division game at Buffalo coming up this week. So give us a little preview of that, of what this high-octane offense is looking to go against in this Buffalo defense.
Yeah, I mean, obviously division games are always extremely important. And, over the last couple of years here, We've had a lot of really, fun games against the Bills, both home and away. It's an extremely tough defense to play against. Obviously, the last 4 or 5 years have been one of the best defenses in the NFL. We know them well. The players stick around. The scheme has been the same. So it's always a fun one. And going up there to Buffalo in that atmosphere, whether you're playing in September, January, whenever, is always fun. So you're right, a big divisional game against a team we know really well, and it's always a fun one.
And a team whose quarterback in Josh Allen gets talked about a lot. For you guys in Tua, I feel like the conversation around him is always so fascinating. He's putting up monster numbers, and we've seen him chirp back at a lot of his detractors and be kind of that fiery guy. Is he like that with you guys behind the scenes?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just kind of part of his evolution. He's always had the talent, obviously dating back to college, and I think as he's gained confidence over the last 4 or 5 years, it's really starting to come out. Where he's confident enough to clap back sometimes and show it. He does show it with us too. There's a simple grasp of the huddle that it's kind of hard to explain. Just being around different quarterbacks in this league over the years, and he definitely has the grasp of it now. That maybe he didn't, when he first got in the league. Like, I don't think really any rookie quarterback can or young quarterback can. And now with all the confidence that he has and the success that he's had and the grasp of the offense, he's obviously the leader of this offense and the leader in the huddle.
So take us down on the field a little bit, because we see a completion percentage. His is high, over 71%. But there's a completion, and then where you just make a catch, and a completion where you have the ability to run after the catch of where he puts the ball. And he seems to throw a great ball for a receiver to continue yards after the catch. Talk about that in his delivery and his completions.
Yeah, that's something that's very much emphasized in this offense is run after the catch, yak. In the offseason and during OTAs and stuff, we as an offense will watch tapes with the coaches just called yak tapes. And, it's about small things like catching the ball and immediately getting vertical, drop steps, things of that nature. And when you have a quarterback who can put the ball on you, like you said, where you don't have to jump, you don't have to break stride, there's a lot of hidden yardage that a lot of people don't really realize. And, if you get 4 yards here, 5 yards there, post catch, or if you throw it to Tyreek when he's, in stride, he gets 50 yards. Those things really add up really quickly. And that's a big part of this offense. So I think, Tua fitting into a scheme where that's really emphasized and, mixed with his accuracy, that's really a combination that does a lot of very good things for this offense.
Yeah, it certainly worked very well so far, and I'm sure Dolphins fans hoping that keeps up as the season rolls along. And like you said, you guys get another division opponent coming up this weekend. Durham, we appreciate it, man. Thanks so much. Best of luck. Stay healthy this season. Hopefully we'll get to talk to you again soon. All right, brother?
Absolutely. Appreciate it, guys. Go Irish.
And we didn't bring up Notre Dame loss, so there we go.
Yeah.
that was intentional. That was intentional. I like it.
Hey, tight end Mitchell Evans still getting it done out there, man, representing for the brand.
That's right. We're still rolling with that position. Yep. There's no hesitation there.
Absolutely. No, the proud Notre Dame tight end tradition that Durham's no doubt a part of. And Dan, listen, a guy in his own right, a great athlete. I can't imagine how slow everyone feels in that Miami Dolphins offensive team room, though, given all the weapons that he talked about there. What the Patriots are to white wide receivers with former lacrosse backgrounds, the Dolphins appear to be with guys with track backgrounds.
It's ridiculous. The speed, like I said, so they can take the top off of defense, or just like Durham said, you can catch a short route and in Tyreek's case, turn it into 50. Let's remember again, they scored 70 and Jalen Waddle didn't play. I mean, now, again, most of this damage was on the ground. As I said, 350 yards on the ground, which is absolutely incredible. This was college-esque with over 700 yards of offense and 350 on the ground.
And what you said, too, and I remember talking about this, too, with Mike McGlinchey, the former right tackle for the 49ers, who played when Mike McDaniel was there, too. It's the attention to detail on all those little things that you heard Durham mention there about what they watch, what they emphasize, how they go about it. An offense with this many moving parts requires everyone to really understand where they fit into that. And to have a guy who's as great a teacher as it sounds like Mike McDaniel is behind closed doors really goes a long way in making this possible for not just the quarterback that we emphasize and look at, but for everyone on down there, including guys like Durham in that tight end room. All right, guys, coming up next, let's finish off this show the only way we know how, by celebrating the fact that the NFL scripts are about to sound a lot better after some big news. Next on GoJo and Golic. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Emerson Lazio holding it down in Boston. Our thanks to our guests, Dolphins tight end Durham Smythe, Lions, everything, super back, Jason Cabinda joining us yet again here on the show. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review, leave us that 5-star rating. Check us out right here live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on DraftKings YouTube channel and all the other great outlets. Guys, let's finish off with this, that, and the third. 3 quick stories. Send everyone on out into their day. And start with the poor Pittsburgh Steelers, man.
Oh, man.
They just want to go home. This Pittsburgh Steelers team, we found out, courtesy of ESPN NFL insider Adam Schefter yesterday, apparently had to make an emergency landing in Kansas City en route back from their win, Dad, out where you were in Las Vegas on Sunday Night Football. They had to try and wait on the same plane that they were waiting broken down for another plane to come in from Atlanta. I saw Cam Hayward, their star defensive tackle, tweeting that this may have been because Micah Parsons' late hitting escapades, but all of this, Dad, ends with just another. There's nothing worse than a travel fiasco, even if you're a team on a chartered flight.
So here's you're right about that. Let me first and foremost say that can be the worst. But the next thing I'll say is you've been on these charter flights, Mike. I've been on these charter flights. The one thing there is an excessive amount of is food and snacks.
Yeah.
So while the normal people, and I'll insert this right now, Mike, your mother left this morning or tried to leave this morning from South Bend to go to Arizona through Chicago. She never got out of South Bend. Sat for 2 hours on a plane, had to go back to the gate, and is coming home. And I guarantee you, the 2 hours she sat on the plane, they did not get a snack or any food. They just sat there. So that is, I'll always try and find the silver lining. Those players at least got fed well while they were sitting on the plane with snacks and or food, because that's what happens on those flights.
The flight left Las Vegas at about 11 p.m. Pacific. They had to wait for another plane. The Steelers were supposed to have landed back in Pittsburgh around 5:30 a.m. that morning. It was more than 6 hours after they were scheduled to land. They finally took off from Kansas City and are going to get home. They don't play again until Sunday, so they'll have plenty of time. But you're right, Dad. The snacks on the plane, that used to be my favorite thing about getting on the charter, was picking out what variety, especially when we got there. Coach Weiss had the best snacks on the plane. Tons of candy available. Shout out to C-Dub on that one. We always ate well on those flights.
A plane full of football players, how long do those snacks last for, though?
Emerson, I can't tell you how much they have. They bring so many, obviously, food, but the snacks.
Like, what are we talking? What are the snacks on a plane for football players?
Mostly candy.
Oh.
Yeah, candy, snack bars, Gatorades, waters, a lot of hydration, really.
A lot of hydration. And maybe the snacks are different now because nutrition is different.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, we had a lot of candy bars, snacks like that. Hell, our guys would eat.
You guys had booze.
We had booze, too. I mean, this is back, too, when on away flights, each player could get 2 beers. You got handed 2 beers going back onto the plane from your away games. And there were players like I had my guy every away trip, Reggie White, grabbed his 2 beers, turned around and handed them to me because he didn't drink. And I said, I made out from that one. So, and then, obviously that turned out to not be a great idea because I think it was Minnesota, someone on the coaching staff, I think, got a DUI leaving, and that started to happen a bit. And the NFL was considered the bartenders here, giving the beer out. So that was over. Those were good times, though, when you could do that. So, tons of snacks. So that part of it, and getting up and you can move around, where on a commercial flight, really, you can't do that. They'll let these guys go all over the place.
So
and
you didn't
say
I was going to say, you didn't witness anybody go full Wade Boggs and mash 107 beers on a single flight then.
No, and I still would need to see proof of that. 107 beers. I mean, I just that's a tough call.
I will say, from this travel issue, it's a lot better than the one I had. We were going to play Washington State in San Antonio, like my junior or senior year at Notre Dame, and we had to take off. It was a big charter flight. South Bend's a small airport, so short run that way. You take off at a pretty steep angle, and we hit like an air pocket and hit like a little free fall, which felt like it happened for about 10 seconds. Guys are freaking out. Guys are yelling on the plane, and I will never forget, as long as I live, Torian Smith, linebacker from Rome, Georgia. I look over at his chair, and all I see is him, arms wide, chest up, ready for the Lord to take him home. I have never seen someone so comfortable in accepting their fate in that moment. We were all fine, but it is seared into my brain for all time. Torian remains a living legend.
Oh, that is awesome.
Guys, let's get to that Emerson, we got some great news out of Hollywood this week.
Yes, let's discuss that. So the writer's strike ending here with a tentative deal. And one of the first announcements that was made following the end of this strike is that The Office is going to be rebooted. I'm not quite sure if we really need an Office reboot and where all the original thoughts and creative ideas now are cooking, but what do you think, GoJo? I'm going to watch it. I'm a sheep. I'm going to watch it.
So, first off, congratulations to the Writers Guild of America for making this happen, standing firm and getting the protections and hopefully added bumps in pay that are necessary in the changing landscape. We've seen how much television has suffered. Movies have suffered without them. And so glad that the hard workers involved are getting what they richly deserve here. Dad, that being said, I'm a little worried. I know it's the original staff that helped create the American version of The Office here, but we saw how much that show, like my brother, Jake, and his wife, Jenny, love The Office more than anybody. Every time I go to visit them, it's always been on the background. We all saw the drop-off in that show when Steve Carell left.
Yeah.
And so unless you're going to be bringing him back as Michael Scott, I really question the decision on this.
And they're not. This is going to be a new cast. It's not going to be, the John Krasinski's, the Jenna Fishers, the Rainn Wilson of the world. So I don't know about this. I mean, I loved the show as well. I may give it a watch just to see, because if it's the writers and stuff, the original writers, you get, because the writing was great, but it's the actor's delivery a lot of times, that's gonna bring it to life, right? So I'm not sure of this one at all, Emerson.
I was going to say, I'm not quite sure if the first 3-4 seasons of the original Office, which were incredible, I don't know if half the stuff they talked about is going to even fly on TV or Netflix anymore. You know what I mean?
And you've heard Steve Carell come out and say that and try and make it sound pretty edgy. I think you're probably right. I think like most great athletes, most of these people will also adjust their humor to the times. But I'm with you. I just don't think. I think it was a great show for the time and place, and I don't know if it's going to work in the reboot, like a lot of reboots that we've seen die on the vine. Speaking of people who are flirting with disaster, let's get to the third here.
Oh, man. So yes, go ahead.
Emerson, go for it.
Okay, all right. So a Dolphins fan revealing his family's tradition at Miami games is to take a tequila shot after every Dolphins touchdown. I don't know if there's been an update out there about this family, or if an entire family now has been wiped off the face of the planet. But this is dangerous. I can imagine the Golics doing this at like a Notre Dame game.
I mean, listen, I may have at some point gotten near 10 shots within the body of a football game, but for an entire family to try and brave that great unknown. Now, we got an update. I don't know this guy's actual name. His name on Twitter is Buck Fuffalo. And I have to say that very slowly for obvious reasons. He said, as people have reached out with some concerns, he'll say, yes, 10 shots is a lot, but they got smaller and more ceremonial towards the end, and they managed it with a lot of hydration on the back end. So they had a good plan they developed on the fly for a situation that nobody was truly prepared for, it seems.
Am I looking at 17 touchdowns? Now I'm looking at the rushing touchdowns and receiving touchdowns. And
they're hung over for the rest of the season.
Yes. And you know what? Now you've got to start to figure out your plan going forward, because now you know what this is. Like when I was calling the game in Oregon this weekend, they had the duck do push-ups, the mascot after every score. And a guy came up and gave me a tip before the game. He said, by the way, we've got 3 different ducks in the stadium for this one. They were prepared because they don't want one duck gassed for the entire season. It's kind of like a running back by committee. They have a duck by committee in Oregon. And so you're going to have to figure out some sort of contingency for the shot plan. Maybe you have that shots spread amongst everyone in your party instead of everyone in your party going down with the ship here.
Yeah, just make sure, so you're putting the car keys somewhere. So nobody's getting in a car leaving that party. That is amazing. As far as the Oregon Duck, you either have 3 ducks doing the push-ups or one that's on steroids. One of the two.
Performance-enhancing drugs is a big thing in mascot circles.
Yeah, there you go.
We hope they're not a big thing in our listener circles, but even if you are, use responsibly, download, subscribe, rate, review, and catch us back here tomorrow. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you then.